And the main words, if you want to do the response, even while still on mute, is yonder come day. So it's yonder comes day. Say that with me. Yonder come day. Then we'll say it fast and go, yonder come day. Yonder come day. Yes. Yonder come day. One more time. Yonder come day. Oh, day, yonder come day. Oh, day, yonder come day. Oh, day, yonder come day. Let it roll into my soul, yonder come day. Oh, day, yonder come day. Oh, day, yonder come day. Oh, day, yonder come day. Let it roll into my soul, yonder come day. That sounded pretty good. Well, around here, it's looking pretty good. It's a sunshine day, yonder come day, sunshine day, yonder come day, sunshine day, yonder come day. Let it roll into my soul, yonder come day. All right, Gail, this is for you. It's a snowy day, yonder come day, snowy day, yonder come day. Oh, 2 feet, yonder come day. Let it roll into my soul, yonder come day. It's a caring day, yonder come day. Caring day, yonder come day. Caring day, yonder come day. Let it roll into my soul, yonder come day. Oh, day, yonder come day. Oh, day, yonder come day. Oh, day, yonder come day. Let it roll into my soul, yonder come day. Lord have mercy. It's a time change day, yonder come day. Time times day. Spring ahead, yonder come day. Let it roll into my soul, yonder come day. Oh, day, yonder come day. Oh, day, yonder come day. Oh, day, yonder come day. Let it roll into my soul, yonder come day. Now, if you haven't already taken your stretch, just make sure you get that stretch in. Oh, get your body moving. We're so glad that you are here this morning. One more time. Oh, day, yonder come day. Here we go. Oh, day, yonder come day. Oh, day, yonder come day. Oh, day, yonder come day. Let it roll into my soul, yonder come day. I said, let it roll into my soul, yonder come day. I said, let it roll into my soul, yonder come day. Oh, Lord have mercy. Welcome to the church in Ocean Park. And so glad that you are here. And I'm going to make an attempt to read this. We'll see what happens on this Yonder Come Day. Church in Ocean Park, we are a caring interfaith congregation, and we celebrate diversity, treating ourselves and others with respect, and working at every opportunity for social justice and singing at the drop of a hat. We're so glad that you're here with us this morning. And you are welcome. Since we're interfaith, you are welcome if you're Muslim, welcome if you're Jewish, welcome if you are Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, Wiccan, atheist, or some combination or something else all together. We extend a special information to those who are still trying to wake up, to those who forgot to move their clocks ahead, and for those that wish we didn't have to on this morning. And for anybody that has to teach or anything like that tomorrow, oh my gosh, day after time change day, oh Lord have mercy. We have an invitation, special invitation to those who are filthy rich or dirt poor, single, married, divorced, gay, or transgender, crying newborns, if you're just browsing or just got out of jail. We don't care if you are more religious than the Pope or haven't been to synagogue since your nephew's bar mitzvah. We extend a special invitation to those who are over 60, to those who are vaccinated, those who aren't yet, and to those who are not sure. We invite soccer moms, tree huggers, latte sippers, vegetarians, junk food eaters, those who are in recovery or still addicted. We invite you if you are having problems, if you are down in the dumps, if you don't like organized religion, or you do. And we have a special invitation to all of us who work too hard, who don't work or have lost their jobs because of the pandemic, and a special invitation to all of the frontline workers. We invite tourists, seekers, doubters, bleeding hearts, and even people that need more coffee. Welcome to the church at Ocean Park. Now, one way that we do like to center ourselves is to sing a chant by Thich Nhat Hanh. So just to settle down a little bit, the words say, I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. So take a breath, and we'll sing this 3 times. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. I have arrived, I am home, in the here and in the now. Welcome to the church at Ocean Park, and to our great joy this morning, she's not a special guest because she's the leader of us all. One of the most amazing women that we know, and so glad to have her bring a greeting this morning. So Reverend Janet, great to see you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm just so grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be a part of this community. I'm Janet Gollery McKeithan. I'm the minister here at the church in Ocean Park. And I know some of you probably don't know who I am at all because I haven't been around for about 4 weeks. I did have an accident, which resulted in loss of consciousness and quite a bit of blood. And I had blood in my brain, which they thought about doing brain surgery, but luckily it dissipated and I didn't have to have the surgery. So it went away on its own, and I lost my memory for a while. I didn't know about COVID, a grandchild, anything else. But it's coming back. I think it's mostly back. It's hard to tell, if you don't know something, you don't know it. So, but my processing is a little bit impaired. So, and I need to rest quite a bit. So some of you have been through head injuries or concussions or things like that. And I know that you could relate a bit. They're all a little bit different, of course. So I just wanted to say thank you for all your support. And thank you for your patience. If you have sent me an email or a phone call and I haven't returned it, I really appreciate your patience, and do it again because I may not ever go back and find it. I mean, it's because especially if you did it early on, I would never find it again. So instead of waiting for me to get back to, please do it again. And if I don't respond again, do it again. So I'm getting better, much better. I'm on my way, and I will be 100%, I'm sure, very soon. But I also know that this year has been similar for many other people. Their whole life your whole lives have been uprooted. This is what you might call the anniversary of COVID beginning. And so a year ago today, or this last week or whatever, is when this first hit. And so many of you, all of us, have had our lives disrupted, not just me. I've had it disrupted in a particular way. You've had your life disrupted in a particular way. I have my story, you have your story. And And all of us have a tragedy story. So many losses that we were not able to mourn together. There are so many devastating things that happen to you and to all kinds of people. We have not had the opportunity to help each other and support each other as we would. Yet we've also not stopped being a community during this year. And in fact, we've added some ways of being community that we won't stop once we're back to being able to see each other again. Our ways of connecting that we have established now, we won't drop them. We'll just add the ability to get together when that's possible. So thank you so much for all your support this year. And I'm really sorry about the times we have not been able to grieve together and mourn together. Many of you have experienced devastating losses and are sometimes, some of you are raw right now. And there has not been the ability to be together and hold one another and comfort one another in the ways that we want to. So every person on this Zoom call, whether or not you've ever been here before, you are now a part of the church in Ocean Park, because that's the way we roll. If you're here, that's what you are. No one person, not me, not anybody, speaks for the whole church in Ocean Park. We're diverse, interfaith community, and that means that every person here is important. So if you have an opinion today that's different than something that is shared, or if you just want to share a new perspective, we welcome it, because that's how we grow. And if we are not able to listen to other perspectives, we won't know how to help make a positive difference in the world. And that's what we're about at the church in Ocean Park, is helping to create positive change and disrupting and dismantling oppressive systems. We can't do that if one of us pretends to know everything. So we don't know everything, and no one person stands for the whole church. Only the administrative board makes statements and things like that. So no matter what you hear anytime at the church in Ocean Park, although today I'm very excited because I know what you hear is, I'm going to, Margaret Prescod is one of the best people possible to be here. So I don't assume this is going to happen this morning, but I just let you know that we do, if you have a different perspective during the sharing time, it's welcome. So I want to begin by acknowledging that we are on stolen land, each one of us. I don't know where you're sitting. Wherever you're sitting on stolen land. And I'd like to acknowledge the people who made it possible for us to be wherever it is that we are. It was taken with violence. It was taken with, their humanity was taken from them. And we acknowledge that they are still among us, and we need to listen, and we need to be among the culture of support and repair. So I want to acknowledge that for a moment, and then I would like to turn it over to Reverend Joseph Hepburn.
Thank you very much, Reverend Janet. Glad to have you with us today.
So good to be here.
I'm going to start my Lenten. Oh, should I? Okay, I'll start my Lenten devotions with a little levity. John the Baptist. What would John the Baptist say to us today? He would say, stay calm, don't lose your head. What would Pontius Pilate say to us today? Wash your hands often. All right, so at least I made somebody laugh. Okay, so we are going to look at Psalm number 77 today. This is our Lenten meditation for today. Today is the 26th day of Lent. We have 14 more days before Palm Sunday. So on this 26th day of Lent, I'm looking at Psalm 77. The psalmist begins with acknowledging that he is suffering badly. He is suffering so much that he doesn't even know what is bothering him. And he says to God, will you leave us forever? God, will you never smile again? Have you left us all alone? And reading from the Message, the new translation of the Bible. So the psalmist begins with an acknowledgement that despite all his prayers and his worship and his belief in God, he's not getting better. He's getting worse. He doesn't even know where he is. And he says in the last two verses something, last part of the chapter, something very important. His condition is not improving, but the psalmist remembers the historical record of God's deliverance and care as his source of hope for his future. So what the psalmist is doing is what psychologists today are now recognizing is important. And that is two things. Number one, he is reframing the context of his suffering. He's not looking at himself alone all the time and bemoaning his condition and his own situation, but he's putting his illness in another context. He's looking at the deliverance of God's people and how God cared for his people, and that was a source of hope for the future. And secondly, he puts his suffering in the midst of a storm, and he sees the storm in a unique way. The storm, the different facets of the storm are conversing with one another. The different aspects of the storm are speaking together. So in the storm, the psalmist seems to see and hear the different elements of the storm communicating with each other. And we see this in verses 16 to 19 of that Psalm 77. It is in this conversation between the different elements of the storm, the lightning, the wind, the thunder. He's seen a conversation between those aspects of the storm. And this dramatization gives the psalmist assurance. It gives him the evidence that God is still active and present in our lives. He reframes this issue, and in doing that, he senses the healing and renewal that he was seeking all the time. So hidden in the storm, God brings peace. Hidden in our storms, God brings healing, sometimes without us even realizing it. So I leave you with these two elements. Don't put yourself alone, but to put your suffering in a different context. And as you look at that context, that situation, you would find a source of healing and renewal as you put your mind off of yourself. So thanks be to God for this Lenten season. He has given us these messages of hope and reassurance. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Joseph. I was like listening to your words. I love the levity, love the messages. So now we have a chant that the choir used to love to do. There's 3 parts. One more time. We have come here to sing together one more time. Walk a mile in my shoes before you throw that stone of judgment. Walk a mile in my shoes. Be kind, everyone carries a heavy load. One more time, we have come here to sing together one more time. One more time, we have come here to sing together one more time. One more time, we have come here to sing together one more time. One more time, we have come here to sing together one more time. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes before you throw the stone of judgment. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes before you throw the stone of judgment. Walk a mile in my shoes. Be kind. Everyone carries a heavy load. Be kind. Everyone carries a heavy load. Be kind. Everyone carries a heavy load. And now I welcome Maureen Dean to introduce our speaker.
Yes, hello again, everyone. Good day. It's gives me great pleasure this morning or this day, depends on where in the world you are, to introduce our speaker, Margaret Prescod. Margaret is a longtime community-based women's rights, anti-poverty, and anti-racist campaigner. Her work is local, national, and international, covering a wide range of issues. Her causes range from welfare rights, pay equity, a care income or living wage for all workers, including mothers and caregivers, to opposing mass incarceration and solitary confinement, promoting environmental justice, and support for grassroots campaigners for justice in Haiti. Among Margaret's outstanding achievements are founder of the Black Coalition Fighting Back Serial Murders in 1984, which through persistence and use of documentary advocacy, the film The Grim Reaper, led to LAPD conviction of a serial killer who murdered 15 Black women in 2016. Margaret is a founding member of Every Mother is a Working Mother Network, which coordinates the Los Angeles-based DCF and Philadelphia-based DHS Give Us Back Our Children movement. A co-founder of International Black Women for Wages for Housework and founding member of Women of Color in the Global Women's Strike. Margaret's work has led to delegations that have successfully moved the United Nations resolution on measuring and valuing unpaid work in the home, on the land, and in the community. Currently, Margaret is a host of Sojourner Truth, a national syndicated drive time public affairs program on Pacifica radio stations KPF in Southern California, and with a listenership on radio stations all across the US. A coordinating member, committee member of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for a moral revival, Margaret uses the airwaves to defend the poor. An immigrant from Barbados, Margaret is the author of Black Women Bringing It All Back Home, based on her experience as an immigrant. She is the mother of one daughter and lives in East Los Angeles. So it was a great church in Ocean Park. Welcome, Margaret, that we look forward to hearing and sharing with you this morning. Thank you so much for all that you've done and for being here with us today. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much, Sister Maureen, and it's so good to be with you all again. Reverend Janet, so good to hear you, and we'll be asking all of your ancestors and mine to walk with you on your journey of healing here. Also, I'd like to thank Dr. Kim Harris, Reverend Joseph Hepburn, Louise Dobbs, and Trudy Goodman, of course, and all the good people at the Church of Ocean Park for really allowing me to be able to join your worship service this morning. And as a community campaigner, I would be remiss without also thanking my sisters and brothers in the Global Women's Strike and Payday Men's Network here in Southern California, but also around the nation and world, because none of us can do this work alone, as all of you know, as a member of a community. And that work is reflected in my presentation this morning, which is also marking, of course, this is March. We just had International Women's Day. It's Women's History Month. What I'd like to focus on now is something that the entire country now knows, that COVID-19 caused tremendous devastation and grief and loss, which Reverend Janet so eloquently spoke about. We also know that it has increased not only stress, but it has increased the caregiving workload of women. It has widened economic inequality for women. It's increased domestic violence as well. And actually, the health disparities, the racial health disparities that we know about have not lessened during COVID-19, but actually widened during COVID-19, if you would believe that. And we know who are the workers and the people who are disproportionately impacted, people of color, including Latinx people, indigenous people, Black people. We know about the essential workers, of course. The majority of essential workers, by the way, or those deemed essential workers, are women of color. So that's what we're basically dealing with, and that's the context of what we are dealing with. Now, what I'd like to share with you also, when we talk about women and we talk about caregiving, we also have to look at the numbers of those of us who are living in poverty. Who are they? The majority of those living in poverty in the United States, 70% of them are women and children. I want to underscore that, 70% women and children. The majority of those who are being incarcerated right now, percentage-wise, are single mothers. There are more men in prison than women, but the majority of those now being criminalized are mothers, especially mothers. And one could just imagine, you know, mothers, we will do, and I was a single mother for quite a long time, we'll do what we have to do to take care of our children. But we have also seen, for those of us who have been making this movement, this ragtag grassroots movement for close to 50 years now, that has been trying to hammer away about the centrality of caring for people as the essence in so many ways of society. And we have seen a society that focuses and prioritizes not on that, but prioritizes resources going to war, occupation, ecological devastation. We, for a long time now, have been saying no, caring for each other. And now we're talking about caring for the environment is central to what we have to do. We're talking about the survival of the entire human race, the survival of our planet. And interestingly enough, now with COVID, I don't know if you've noticed, but there are a lot of articles in the mainstream press. There are a lot of pundits that are now talking about the centrality of caregiving work. I have, thanks Phoebe, who helped me to prepare a few slides here. I have, if we could go to one of those slides on the value of this work, because a lot of people say, well, you're talking about resources for this work, but what do you mean about the value? Let's go to that first slide. Women's unpaid work in the United States contributes to the US economy alone, and we're not talking internationally, every year, $500 billion. So those who talk about you know, full-time caregivers as though they're not workers, they're not contributing anything, just look at that number. Worldwide, women's unpaid work conservatively estimated at contributing $11 trillion to the economy worldwide. That's according to the UNDP. If we go to then the next slide about the hours of unpaid work that we do, there are 53 million unpaid family caregivers in the United States and 11 million stay-at-home parents. I'm sure a number of you in the audience right now are part and parcel of that. Half of Black and Latina caregivers do 30 hours or more a week in unpaid caregiving, according to the AARP. And worldwide, according to Oxfam, women and girls spend 12.5 billion hours every day doing unpaid work. But, you know, we're doing nothing, right? If we go to the next slide on poverty, that reflects a statistic that I mentioned earlier. 70% of the poor in the US, women and children. This is according to Legal Momentum. And women do 2/3 of the world's work for 5% of the world's income from the ILO. Just take a pause there on the slides, just to give a little background and a little history. But I have to say, Reverend Joseph Hepburn, listening to the psalm that you chose this morning, where you talk about reframing the context of suffering, where you talk about the deliverance of care to the people, where you talked about suffering in the midst of a storm and the aspects of the storm speaking to each other. Reverend Joseph Hepburn, when I heard that, it reminded me of the activism work that we do. And I'll say what I mean. In the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, you know, the Poor People's Campaign called for by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King before he was assassinated, and now revived by the Bishop William Barber and Reverend Liz Theo Harris. They talk about fusion, a fusion movement, and attacking what they call the evils of poverty, racism, the war economy, environmental devastation, and what they call shifting the moral narrative. But the idea of fusion is not new. We can go back to the period of Reconstruction, which Reverend Barber talks about, and we could see multiracial people in the South, Black and poor white people organizing together, but that had to be destroyed, right? Because we're not supposed to come together as we are today across the divide. So when you talk about suffering in the midst of a storm and the aspects of the storm speaking to each other, I also think of the work we have been doing in our corner of the movement, those of us in the Global Women's Strike, bringing together those of us across race, across sector, not only in the United States, but also internationally. And I firmly believe, Reverend Hepburn, that in the coming together of that storm, that is really how we change the world. That is the healing and that is the renewal, but that is also the work, isn't it? It's also the work of how do we do it? How do we cross those divides? How do we, as Black and white and Latinx and Indigenous and LGBTQIA, of immigrant and non-immigrant, those of us who are criminalized, those of us who are not, those of us with disabilities, you know, how do we come together for that healing, the work of the movement, that healing that we, not only we need, but our planet absolutely needs. And one of the things, Reverend Janet, you're absolutely right. Nobody knows the answer, right? But we know what we have learned from our experience. And we know that, and something that caregivers, mothers in particular, but not only mothers, those who are primary caregivers have also always known, is the centrality of people caring for each other and what that has to do with how the survival of the entire of society. However, let's talk about crossing the divides a little bit. The welfare rights movement of the late 1960s and 70s, there was a great leader, Johnny Tillman, who came out of Southern California of Watts. In 1965, she said, she knows how to solve the welfare problem, she said. If the president paid caregivers a living wage, she just didn't say a wage, she said a living wage for the work they're already doing, raising their children, etc., the welfare problem would be resolved. But here's the crossing of the sectors. She said, not only would it benefit welfare mothers, but she said housewives, you know, that was how it was referred to at the time. Housewives would also get a wage. She was part of a tremendous movement, mainly led by Black and Puerto Rican women, that was a women's movement, but it was never acknowledged as such, you see. That's part of what I mean by the divide, because when we think of the women's movement, we think of feminism that emphasized a job outside the home as liberation for women. And what happened with COVID is that a lot of us who went out to have those careers, because we always said that as people, as women, we want a choice to work inside the home or outside the home. We found that our support systems deteriorated. The schools were shut down. Grandma couldn't come in and fill in to do the childcare anymore because of the danger to grandma. Women in careers found themselves on Zoom meetings, on the computers while they had the children running around. Somebody had to take care of the children. Somebody had to take care of the elderly folks. And I really think that the shift that we're seeing now, and yes, elections do matter. I saw, I think it was you, Dr. Kim Harris, in the background there, you had something about voting. Voting and elections do matter. The shift that we see happening now with this administration, where you hear a lot more talk about poverty. Have y'all ever heard so much talk about poverty and poor people ever by a president of the United States or by elected officials or by pundits in the LA Times, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Guardian, worldwide? No, not ever, right? And I do think that the grassroots movement, and I have to lift up the Poor People's Campaign for that, because I think they had a lot to do with it. They were determined that poverty was going to be on the agenda, just as our women's movement, the women's movement, those of us in our corner of the women's movement, are determined that the issue of caregiving and caregivers be not only on the national agenda, but be on the international agenda. And guess what? Here you have those two things coming together right now. Poverty as well as the issue of caregiving. I just want to quickly, I know my time is limited, go on to the next slide here, just to tell you a little bit of how we've done it. Are we able to pull that up? Okay. Thank you, Louise, for all of your work. This is a little new for me as well, working in all this technology we have here. It took us, our network, a very, very long time, over a decade of working in the United Nations to get the resolution that you see before you now on measuring and valuing unwaged work, not only at the home, but on the land and in the community. And right now, at the anniversary of the Beijing conference, UN Conference of Women that happened in 1995, they're saying that this is one of the most important, they call it macroeconomic resolutions to come out of that. But we were able to win that with the support of a lot of countries in the global South, because a lot of countries in the South, they realize that while this seems like a women's issue, the majority of work done in the world, I want to underscore that, the majority of the work done in the world is unpaid. That doesn't mean it's not valued. It doesn't mean it doesn't produce wealth. It doesn't mean that it is not central to the survival of everybody, because it is, right? So just wanted to underscore that. But the welfare rights movement in the United States, on the one hand, have been fighting for a long time on this, but they were dismissed. They were seen, oh, these are just a bunch of Black women, lazy scroungers, doing nothing, expecting a handout. No. On the other side of the Atlantic, you had people like Selma James, who is a founder of the Wages for Housework campaign, talking about wages for housework and defending family allowance, something called family allowance. Guess what? Fast forward to today, and let's go on to the next slide about support for all caregivers now. This was something that we, our network, did, in the lead up to the election, you can see it's addressed to Joe Biden and Harris about supporting all caregivers now. We really have been pressing not only to expand financial support for unpaid and paid caregivers, but also for the child tax credit. Let's go on to the next slide about the child tax credit. I don't know if you all have noticed, but a lot of people are talking about this refundable child tax credit in this stimulus bill that was recently passed. This is really a critical thing. Now, there's a great debate about whether it will reduce 50% of poverty among children or if it will reduce poverty among children by a third. But I'll tell you the significance of it. The United States is the only country in the Western world, the only developed country that doesn't provide a payment that will help families on a monthly basis for the care and costs of children. So this is a real breakthrough for us. And I'll just go on to the next slide. Then about the American Rescue Plan. Not only is it in the Biden plan, but only for a year. But you now have legislation in Congress that wants to expand the child tax credit and other tax credits as well to make it permanent. And for those of you who are wondering about the child tax credit, it means for a child, if you are a mom of a child from ages 1 to 6, you will get a monthly check. They're hoping to start in July for $300 for each child. And if your child is 6 to 17 years old, you will get a monthly check of $250. Now, we know that's not a lot of money, but it's all relative. Let's go into the next slide. It's all relative, isn't it? Because if we look at the impact that has, and here's Representative DeLauro taking some credit for it. To her credit, she has been listening to the voice of the grassroots and has been really fighting for this for quite some time. And then on to the next slide. Just ask any impoverished mother with 3 children, if you're getting 3 children, let's say under 5, under 6, if you're getting $300 a month per child, that's $900 a month. Will this be a benefit to you or not? And guess what the answer will be? So a lot of people are now talking about welfare as we used to know it. Some people are saying, well, this is just welfare. But for those of us who are part of the movement of valuing and payment for caregivers, this is a huge step in the right direction. But a lot of people don't know about it. Congresswoman Moore, you could see she is calling on the IRS to implement an outreach program so that people in all communities, particularly impacted communities, have a portal established to make sure that they can collect their money. Because you know what? If your income is too low to pay taxes, you can still get the money. If you are getting welfare benefits or food stamps or any of that, not only will those benefits not be reduced, but you will also be eligible for the child tax credit. So that's a very important bill that Gwen Moore, and I'll give you some information a little bit later as we're coming now to the close. The next slide on the American Family Act. There are now bills in the House as well as in the Senate to make this child tax credit permanent. And moving on to the next slide then, another bill that is connected to all of this is a bill that was being reintroduced by Congresswoman Gwen Moore of Wisconsin. By the way, Gwen Moore is a Black woman who was on welfare. When she was on welfare, she had her children taken from her and had to fight to get them back, because increasingly we see that children are being taken and put into foster care or up for adoption simply because their families are poor. So she's saying we have to redefine work. We couldn't agree more to say that caregiving is work and being a student is also work. And then if we go to the next piece of legislation, HR 174 is definitely moving in that direction, right? and looking at the term of what a qualifying dependent means, and to include not only a qualifying child, but an age dependent. That's really important for those of you who are active in any church or religious organizations. We know that there's a lot of work that's done, right? But we also know that a lot of us, sometimes at the same time we're caring for a child, we're caring for an older family member as well. And that means that with Gwen Moore's bill, an age dependent would also be eligible for those payments. So I do have a slide here that gives some more information for people who want to follow up on some of this, but I just want to, and wrapping up, to cover a few things very, very quickly. There isn't the time to go into the impact or the challenges that we as women of color face, the historic racism, the Black infant mortality rate, what Dorothy Roberts, that great Dorothy Roberts, calls the family regulation system in relation to child welfare, the systemic racism in healthcare and healthcare disparities, but also the fact that in the introduction, the sister kindly mentioned the work that I was doing and continue to do about the serial murders of Black women in South Los Angeles. You know, when I founded the Black Coalition Fighting Back Serial Murders in the mid-1980s, our theme was Black women's lives count. This was decades before the Black Lives Matter movement, okay? Decades before it. And we knew that the reason these murders were going on, and by the way, as of now, there are about 200 women in a 40-mile radius of South LA, Black women, who are either dead or missing and therefore presumed dead by 5 serial killers operating at the same time. Would you believe that? And the whole nation doesn't know about it? It's not a national scandal. Why? It's a continuation from the days of slavery, of the devaluation of the lives of some of us. And what we're saying in the Black Coalition Fighting Back Serial Murders, we're not having it. What can you do to help us out? Right now, we are working on a permanent memorial for the victims that will likely be in Jesse Owens Park, something dignified to say these lives may be lost, but they're not forgotten. I'll put, when I'm done, the website called Rose South LA, where you can go to support this effort. Why Rose South LA? It stands for Reclaiming Our Sisters Everywhere, right? Because we're hoping that in other parts of the country where these pockets of murders happening, they will do a similar thing. My work on Haiti was mentioned. Haiti, the first Black republic, led the way for the ending of slavery in the whole of the Americas, led the way for the tremendous expansion of the United States with the Louisiana Purchase when the French were booted out by the successful Haitian Revolution, and Haiti has paid a price ever since. The last couple of days, a lot of my time was spent, there were congressional hearings on Thursday and Friday on Haiti, and we scrambled at the last minute to get a lot of material and work put together on that. We're pleased that Congresswoman Karen Bass, she read into the record and asked the number of questions that we sent in, and also the materials that we sent. Congresswoman Maxine Waters has been fantastic on the question of Haiti and support. There's no time to go into all of that now, but just to say that there is a thread that connects all of it. And the thread actually goes back to the Psalm. And I'm going to go back and read that Psalm that started this discussion, which is the suffering in the midst of the storm. Because all of those point to suffering in the midst of the storm, doesn't it? But we know that if the lives of Haitians, the Black lives in Haiti doesn't matter, the lives of none of us anywhere will matter. We know that if we don't reprioritize Reverend Hepburn and everyone, the kind of healing and renewal, the coming together of the storm, I see that fusion happening, that is the direction that we really have to go in. And my show is comes out of KPFK 90.7. Is named Sojourner Truth. My daughter's middle name is Sojourner Truth. And one of the things Sojourner Truth said, when women gets her rights, man will be right. And then there will be peace on earth and goodwill to all. So that is the coming together of the storm. And that is the healing. I'll end there. And I want to thank you so very much for your recognition of International Women's Month and for welcoming me into your space. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, I just feel like I want to take a breath and just take it all in. I really do. Oh, wow. Thank you. So we're going to have a song now, and then we'll have that time for community sharing that we mentioned. And so people will, I'm sure they'll have great questions and thoughts about what you have said. So we will, the song and the lyrics are in the chat. Draw the circle wide. So please join me in singing this. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle wide. Do that again. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. Draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle wide. Do that part again. Draw the circle wide. Draw it wider still. Let this be our song. No one stands alone, standing side by side. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle wide. One more time. Draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide. No one stands alone, we'll stand side by side. Draw the circle wide. Oh, draw the circle wide. Draw the circle wide.
Thank you, Dr. Kim Harris. So wonderful to hear you. It's time now for community sharing, a time when You get to speak your mind or ask the question of Margaret. Either way. Go to the participant screen, click on raise hand, and I will call on you. Linda Bond, and then Craig.
Craig had his hand up first.
All right, Craig.
Thank you. Margaret, believe me, whenever I hear you, I am reminded strictly about the struggles of Haiti. And it's so fascinating that when I look at history as a child, there is a chapter related to the Louisiana Purchase, but there's not the recognition as to why the Louisiana Purchase was necessary. But when I get to Black history, the Haitian, revolt with Dusable and Toussaint Louverture become very, very much clear. And, it becomes personal because I'm looking at my ancestry and the year 1790 comes up. And in 1790, one of my ancestors had made the, trek here into Louisiana. And in 1790, Louisiana was not a state. So my question now comes back to the issue, why it's personal. The question comes back to, as part of that rebellion, the arrogance of, I guess it was France and with help of the World Court, to penalize, Haiti and have them pay reparations. And within that, I guess you could say miseducation, it has impoverished this. So when we talk about reparations, it takes on a whole nother concept. You're dealing with an administration that doesn't even want to address $15 an hour as a minimum wage. So I'm wondering specifically, what is it in the way of, I guess you could say, work or plan to address, even the Democrats are opposed to some Democrats are opposed to a $15 minimum wage. So I'm wondering specifically what in the way of planning are politicians or are elected officials looking at in terms of addressing some of this, because we can't more or less go further without at least addressing that value in terms of work.
Absolutely. How should we do this? Should I respond or take a few questions and then respond together? What is your wish?
It's really up to you. If you want to respond to that, that's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, just quickly, thank you for a bit more of the history of Haiti, which there was no time to get into. And just to say, by the way, not only did the Haitians defeat the most powerful army of the day, Napoleon's army, it would be like Grenada today defeating the United States. If you know, that's how significant it was. It was a major international event because it attacked slavery, which was so vital, not only for the United States, but for the colonial powers. But also he sent his brother-in-law, Craig Leclerc, after that and say, oh, we got to fix this up. Let's go take care of these Haitians. And they kick his butt too. And the English came in and they got rid of them. You know what I'm saying? And not only that, but they started interdicting slave ships and saying, and freeing the slaves. This was a problem because if the slaves got to the shores of Haiti, then they could be free. But the other thing they did was when the struggle for Latin America was going on by Bolivar, and Bolivar twice had to flee for his life, the Haitians gave him refuge. And not only did they give him refuge, but they sent back ships and fighters. A lot of people don't know that. To this day, you can go to places in Venezuela where Haitians died fighting for the liberation of Latin America. And the Haitians had one request of Bolivar: to stand against slavery. But when the first conference of the Americas happened and Bolivar was involved in it, Haiti initially was invited, and the United States said, we don't sit down with the N-word. And Haiti was disinvited, okay? And it wasn't only Haiti, by the way. In the English-speaking Caribbean, I'm from Barbados, the former slavers, when emancipation happened, they received two sets of payments. They received payments for the loss of their quote-unquote slave labor. But then those of them who signed up for a program called the apprenticeship program, meaning that for 7 years, if you former slaves worked for the same slaveholders, the plantations, for like next to nothing. So if you signed up for the apprentice program, you got additional money. So they got two sets of money, Craig, if you would believe that. And what did we get? So all of this is being looked at now. CARICOM has a very vibrant, CARICOM, the Caribbean governments, they have a very vibrant reparations movement happening. Back to the $15 an hour. Biden has said he's committed to $15 an hour. We have people like Joe Manchin, the conservative Democrats, as you know, things are so tight in the Senate. The Democrats can't afford to lose one vote. A number of us, though, were really upset when Joe Biden said that, well, if I don't know, people may know just quickly that the Senate parliamentarian had said was the rule to say whether $15 an hour could remain in the Biden stimulus plan. Before she made her ruling, Biden said, well, she'll probably rule no. Why are you going to say that before it happens, right? So a number of people were upset about that. So the fight is going to continue. The struggle is going to continue for $15 an hour. And we know that $15 an hour at least is definitely needed to be the other piece of lifting people out of poverty. What we don't want to happen, and that's beginning to happen among some in the left, is they're beginning to contrast $15 an hour and the child tax credit, and kind of putting down the child tax credit because the $15 an hour wasn't there, okay? There's some sexism, first of all, involved in that, because we need both. We need this money for the children, and we need more. We need a care income on top of the child tax credit, and we need $15 an hour. But for far too long, organized labor, the organized left, they have focused only at the wage job, the place where a lot of us are exploited, the place where a lot of our bodies and the environment are destroyed because of the jobs that we do. And it's time for the movement, and start with the labor movements, et cetera, to move beyond that. And not only look at the wage sector, but also to fight and stand with those of us who are part of the unwaged sector. So this is, I think it's a fight that a lot of us are in for, Craig. So to be continued.
Bonnie, okay, go ahead, Bonnie, and then Linda.
This is more at a personal level, but I feel very strongly that caregiving for the elderly needs to be given a whole lot more respect and more money. I was the responsible person for my mom for quite a few years. I had to go out of town frequently to take care of business, if you will. It put me into bankruptcy because I put a lot what money I had into taking care of business up there, trashing a car, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I couldn't work a regular job because, oh, excuse me, hire me, but I may need to leave town in an emergency in a moment's notice. Hello. The church was quite supportive of me at the time, emotionally speaking. I was always calling our minister, Sandy, please lift me up Sunday, you know, and I would feel the lift up Sunday mornings. But what I've often felt was the caregiving should be compensated by the government. Thank God my mother had the money so that we could hire on caregivers from an agency. Thank God the money lasted. If she'd been alive another year, it would have been gone. Caregiving is not easy. I've done it myself, but also I look at how the caregivers helped my mom out. I did my best to make sure they were paid respectfully, but it was a challenge. You're not only doing the physical work, you're doing housekeeping, you're doing the physical work, helping the elderly person bathe, feeding them, cajoling them, organizing. You have to be a diplomat, psychologist, etc. I've worked with Alzheimer's people. Oh my God. It's exhausting work. And I've often thought it would be very nice if the government would help subsidize the cost of caregiving to the family that needs it and to the caregiver themselves. Thank you.
Wow, Bonnie, such moving testimony. I really hope we can get a recording. I know it's your church service, but that's the kind of voice that elected officials need to hear. Because there are millions like you, Bonnie, who are doing this work. People are devastated, and caregivers themselves get ill. The stress of it, the physical strain of it, the lack of support. People are going bankrupt, they're getting ill, they're stressed out, and it's not right, to say the least, not only for the caregiver, but for the person who's being cared for. And that's one of the reasons we think, and we're fighting for, a total change of priorities. And people think, oh, that's not possible. But look now at what has shifted from the Reagan years and the Clinton years with welfare reform to what's happening now, where people are talking about caregiving. The Marshall Plan for Moms. You had celebrity women taking out a full page ad in the New York Times saying, hey, I had some of their quotes in it. It's time to put a dollar figure on our labor. Motherhood isn't a favor and it's not a luxury, it's a job. And they're not only talking about mothers, they're talking about caregivers, and they're actually proposing $2,400 a month, which underestimates it. But Bonnie, I'm sure that would have made a tremendous difference to you. It would have helped. It wouldn't have solved the whole problem, but it would have helped. So we do have a Care Income Now petition, and at the end of it, we'll put the slide up again for people who want to sign on to that petition, because we're serious about this. This is just like, it took us 10 years in the UN. When we started in the UN, the work of valuing, Bonnie, this work, people, including the US, told us you'll never get it. It just won't pass. We never gave up. I remember Bella Abzug having a conversation with her in the UN building when the language was dropping. I said, Bella, we got to get this back in. And Bella said, Margaret, it's gone. I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. And I said, well, Bella, thank you very much. And we went on and we organized and we got it back in, because we are determined about it. And we know how many lives depend on it. So we're going to keep working, and we're going to keep struggling, and we're going to keep bringing people together. And now the care income isn't only that we're calling for, not only for caregivers like yourself, Bonnie, but for people who care for the land, who care for the environment. Because let's face it, if the environment goes to hell, our caregiving work increases, doesn't it? I mean, right now, I feel a bit like a climate refugee, because I'm sitting out in the desert, by the way, in Chimawavy land, because the pollution in LA was really getting to my damaged lungs. So there's an interrelationship between the environmental devastation and how that impacts health, and then how it impacts the level of caregiving that we all have to do as a result. Thank you so much for your work. And I'm glad you came through it, and I'm glad the church was there to support you. Thank you.
All right. From now on, we need to be a little brief. Questioners, responders, Linda, then Trudy, then Maureen.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Margaret. There was so much that I wanted to respond to, but I was thinking about how you began, talking about the ways in which the coronavirus pandemic has really exacerbated the contradictions of racism and sexism and exploitation that are inherent in capitalism, right? Yeah. And so what I think is what's interesting to me and what I'd like to sort of explore is how we frame this, right? And I frame it as a communist as the contradictions between a society where we work together to produce what is needed, and a very small group of folks rip us off and keep us exploited and divided for their profits. And what I'm fighting for is a society that's based on caring, not based on exploitation. And I think it's just sort of interesting to frame. I mean, that's how I frame the discussion, right? And the next book that I want to read, and I'm actually trying to find somebody who will help me read it because it's hard, is Silvia Federici's Caliban and the Witch, Women in the Body and Primitive Accumulation, who talked a whole lot about wages for health for unpaid labor of women. And I don't know a lot about that history because that's not the movement that I come out of. So I just sort of be interested in your comments in response to what I have to say.
Very quickly, definitely agree with you about what the purpose of the economy and society should be for the caring of people and the environment. In terms of reading, I would really suggest a couple of things. Selma James has an anthology, Sex, Race, and Class and the Perspective of Winning, and was published a few years ago. And she has another anthology coming out in, I think it's August. Someone who's on the chat who knows, or July, can put that in the chat. I would suggest you go there. A lot of the New York Times did a big piece on Silvia Federici and wages for housework recently. I've got a lot of personal experience with Silvia. Sylvia hasn't been involved in the wages for housework campaign since 1977. We haven't talked a lot about it, but there was a problem of race and racism with the New York committee and Silvia Federici. And I haven't talked with Sylvia, frankly, since. Because when we came together as Black Women for Wages for Housework, we wanted to work on welfare and students who were on welfare getting their grants cut, et cetera. There were a whole set of issues, so there's no time to go into it now. No doubt, early on, she made important and useful contributions, but a number of us are not happy that we have built this movement from the 70s up until now. But those of us who are grassroots people like myself, who are not academics, as Sylvia is, and who don't have the time to sit down and write books, I barely had time, frankly, to even prepare for today. There was so much going on. We get written out of history, and that is not right. And Sylvia should speak up about it, and she has not. So that's a story to be continued. So those, I'm not saying don't read her book, I haven't, but I'm sure it's very good and it's very interesting and very informative. But I would really point you in the direction of the work of Selma James as well. Thank you.
Maybe you could put that in the chat, Margaret.
Okay.
Trudy and then Maureen, and I think that will be it. I apologize if you can't get a turn.
Thank you this morning, Margaret. This was such a delight. I mean, I know you and have listened to you on the radio and give speeches out in the world, and been a part of the committee work that you're doing. And I mean, you are just so impressive with your knowledge and your energy behind fighting
for us. And I just want to say that I'm honored to be able to call myself your friend. The question that I have is about lower middle class and working class moms or people, because I can remember being a working class, lower middle class worker and a single mom. And so many of the programs and grants were not made available to us because we were considered to make too much money. And basically what we were making was like this base pay that folks needed to make in order to get by. And I think that there are a lot of folks on this call that knows what that feels like, to be making a quote unquote living wage and still not be able to provide for our families in the ways that they need to be provided. So I wondered if in this new legislation, and before I go on, let me just say, it is so important to get that link to that petition this morning in our chat before we get off this phone, so that folks can copy it and sign that petition to let Biden know that we ain't kidding. We need this for our communities. But I wanted to know if within this new legislation, they are also, I'm glad to see that finally somebody's talking about the poor, because it's just like you said, nobody gave a damn about the poor ever in discussing what they were going to do for them as president. So in addition to what is in this for the poor, I'd like to know if there are any recommendations and acknowledgement of the need of the working class and the lower middle class. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Trudy. You know, you are one of my sheroes and a sister and a comrade in this struggle. And so very much love you and appreciate you. And if someone, Sydney or Eric or someone, if you are on this call and you're able to put in, yeah, there it is. Eric is on the case. Team Eric, the sign-on petition Trudy mentioned in the chat. And there's also a sign-on letter for the Care Income Now campaign there as well. But Trudy, what you say is so important. A big fight that the Poor People's Campaign is having right now is that they say, and we firmly agree with them, that the measures of poverty in the United States are way too low. I mean, it's ridiculous. If you're a single person, what is it, like $13,000 a year? You try living on $13,000 a year anywhere in Southern California, or anywhere in this nation. It's a joke. So they're saying there are actually 140 million poor or low wealth people. And that when the lockdown happened and they found that a number of people couldn't get together, was it $400 or $800, something like that, to meet an emergency? People who you know, were defined as middle class, people got the sense of, there's something wrong with this picture, because they're people and women doing the double day like yourself, Trudy, raising your family, doing the caregiver work at home, and on top of that, doing the work outside of the home, and that none of that was enough. So the poverty levels, first of all, have got to be redefined along the lines that the Poor People's Campaign is asking for. The base pay, even $15 an hour, I don't think $15 an hour is enough right now. I mean, that I know that's the demand, fight for 15, but we need a lot more than that. But what we're saying is that we want a base of $15. I would put it a little higher. I would actually say 25. And on top of that, we want the care income and we want the child benefits. Why? The slides that I put up earlier, I it's almost like a horrible joke is happening on us, because in the United United States, just unpaid work is $500 billion value to the US economy. But yet we're being told, oh, you know what? We can't give you all this because it's a handout, it's a charity. What the hell are you talking about? Because nothing in this society could function without this work. It's like with undocumented people. You know, they, trash undocumented, deport, whatever. What would happen in California if all the undocumented people left? The whole economy would bloody fall apart. So I think we need to get real, stop lying, and be honest about it. And Trudy, I think in the chat, Eric and others are putting up links for people because we really do need the support. If someone could put up the link too for the Rose South LA project, that would be great. And for those of you who want to support what's happening in Haiti, we could put up the link for the Haiti Emergency Relief Fund and also go to the HaitiSolidarity.net website for up-to-date information about what's going on. Thank you for all of your work for so many decades, Trudy. Thanks.
Okay, Maureen, you have the last word.
Yes, I mean, it's still absolutely, great honor, Sister Prescod, for all that you've been doing together in the community. I am from the Caribbean. I'm from Jamaica, and I did work along with the Sister in Theatre Collective and Morning Mackenzie and all that work dealing with the women's unpaid labor. And the fact that so much for us, how it's tied into history. In the 80s, the big struggle we had around white feminism, because we were already in the fields working. There was never a time when we had to fight to get out into the workplace. We've always been in the workplace, but in the workplace without pay. And so a lot was being able to done there. And I'm particularly interested in your, I am, among my profession is working as a clinical social worker. And I've been really thinking about the extent to which taking people's children, ripping children from their family has been such a fundamental tenet of colonialism, in whichever way it is done. And so I'm particularly interested in your Give Us Back Our Children movement and how that's been, so maybe it's a little time, but if you have a link, you could also put up, what is it about our work culture that makes it acceptable to remove children from their family?
Yeah, just quickly, I know we are out of time. Thank you so much, sister from the Caribbean there. It's always greetings from you there. One quick thing, let me get up and show it to you. There is this book by Ndaye from Guyana. You may know that name. And the sister who asked about reading books as well, I would suggest The Point is to Change the World by Ndaye. It's edited by Alyssa Trotz, who is from Guyana. And Ndaye was a colleague of oh gosh, I'm having a moment here. Walter, who wrote the book, Walter Rodney, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Really important book. He was assassinated in Guyana. And Ndaye was very critical in the Caribbean work. And I remember the work of Sistrin and others, and she played a critical role in the UN work. On the removal of children, I would suggest the work of Dorothy Roberts. Someone may be able to put that in the chat. She has a book called Shattered Bonds, and also about what she calls the child regulation system. And NYU, they're having a major conference happening in August. You may be able to get the link of it. That would be really important to you, where they are marking the anniversary of Dorothy Roberts' book and of her work, critical for the work that you're doing. And in Southern California, Sydney, who I think is on the call, and others of us put together a Know Your Rights guide, so that when child welfare knocks on somebody's door, people are like deer in the headlights. It takes you through the whole process from your first interaction with child welfare all the way through the courts and all of that. And there is a PDF available of that. And if you put your name in the chat, I'm sure we'd be happy to send you that PDF, and stay in touch with us, because we need to know what you know and to share with you what we know so that we could come together and get this information out. Because for children to be taken because their families are poor, not because of abuse, and also if you're a victim of domestic violence and you have children, they take your children and they charge you with failure to provide, which is outrageous. And in Detroit, if your water is shut off, Detroit has some of the highest water bills in the country. If your water is shut off because you're poor, they take your child and charge you with failure to provide, rather than making sure you have the resources so that your family has water. This is what we're dealing with. This is what time it is, people. So thank you so much, for that question, and hope that we can stay in touch, Maureen. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Ooh.
Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for sharing. And I'm really sorry that not everybody could share.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. This has been amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, we're going to do a very simple song. There's only one word you have to sing, and that word is Woyaya. Woyaya. Mm-hmm. So here it comes. Woyaya, 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 woyaya. Sing again. Woyaya, 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 woyaya. One more time. Woyaya, 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 woyaya. We are going, heaven knows where we are going. We'll know we're there. We will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there. We know we will. It will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there. We know we will. We are going. Heaven knows where we are going. We'll know we're there. We will get there. We will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there. We know we will. It will be hard, we know. It will be hard, we know. And the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there. We know we will. It will be hard. It will be hard, we know. And the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there. We know we will. Woyaya. 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 Oh, woyaya. Woyaya. Two more times. Woyaya. 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 Woyaya, 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 Woyaya. All right, so I'll start it off. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, dear Amy. Happy birthday, dear Rita. Happy birthday, dear Beck. Happy birthday, Teresa. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, let's see.
Okay.
Do we still have Reverend Janet with us? I'm not sure.
Yeah, she's there.
Yes, hi.
Do you want to close us out? We haven't gotten a chance to have you do that for many weeks.
Yes, I would love to. This is a time when we all get to unmute and have a chaotic time together. We have our closing circle, which is virtual, but now because we're in virtual land, we put our hands out. We include all the people that are between us and people that are around the world, people who are vulnerable, people who are making decisions that we need to contact, all the people that we don't know, that we walk over every day. We're including all of them in our huge circle, and we say together,
Carry on.
Carry on together. Ready?
Carry on.
Carry on.
Carry on.
Reverend Janet. Woo!
Thanks, everybody.
Carry
on.
Carry on.
Carry on.
Wow. Carry
Carry
on.
on.